Okay, we're about ready to start. First of all, I wanted to welcome everybody and thank everybody for being here. It looks like we've got a great turnout, which is fabulous. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Closer? It sounds like it's echoing. Okay, so I'd like to start this event with a land acknowledgement. Toronto and the TMU location is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. My name is Linda Rothman. Some of you may know me. Not too many, I don't think. I'm an associate professor in the School of Occupational and Public Health here at TMU. I'm a child and youth injury prevention epidemiologist and with a research focus on road traffic injury and active transportation with a public health and healthy cities approach. I've been working in this field, I'm kind of sorry to say, for almost 25 years. And before that, I was an occupational therapist working with children and youth who were unfortunately experiencing the consequences of road traffic injury. Over the years, I've seen the immense growth and development of the field of injury prevention across Canada and internationally, with the increasing recognition that all injuries are not accidents, but are preventable. One of the most influential organizations that have influenced these changes in our own Canadian injury prevention charity, Parachute, which is an important hub for multidisciplinary engagement and knowledge transfer related to road traffic injury prevention. In fact, at a recent World Safety Conference, just in September 2024 in Delhi, India, Parachute won no less than 9 international safety awards for the best media campaigns and evaluation excellence. My projects always include Parachute as an important collaborator to facilitate the translation of the knowledge generated by my research. We are extremely fortunate to have Parachute as the host of this event. So what in the eyes of a public health epidemiologist, and I hope many of you, makes a healthy city? It's a city that people not only can move around conveniently, but also where they feel safe, happy, healthy, and connected with other people. My research examines what type of built environment facilitates this with the recognition that in order to achieve healthy, safe, and sustainable transportation in such a dense, dynamic, and busy city as Toronto, we must strongly promote and protect people who use active transportation, which includes walking and cycling. We also must consider the roles of emergency new modes of transportation such as e-scooters and e-bikes. So how do we do this? We need to work together to create spaces that are inviting and safe for these road users, such as separated bicycle lanes, which we have found increase both comfort in cycling, but also safety. And we also need to look at increasing more pedestrian spaces that promote social interaction as well as safety. We also must slow down traffic speeds to avoid collision and injury. Also, think about climate change, pollution, traffic congestion, and what would help resolve some of these issues going forward into the future generations. And let's face it, despite many seem to think these days, the future is not about putting more cars onto our city streets. We need to continue to promote safe, sustainable active transportation, and we need you, our next generation, to help us with that. I want you to think about this. How would you feel if you could walk or cycle safely at least part of the way to your classes every day? Would it make you feel healthier? Would it make you feel happier? Could you and would you meet friends to walk and ride with? Whether you're coming, I know a lot of people are coming from far suburban areas, but maybe you could take bike share to the GO train, or if you live downtown and could walk or cycle safely across busy urban streets where you feel comfortable. I want to challenge you throughout the session to think really carefully about the things that would help make this possible. And please, I personally invite you to talk to all of us, any of us, the people in the gray sweatshirts, any of the panelists, about how you can help make these things possible. And we can help you to try and take action on these things. This is so important to our future as a healthy Canadian city. We have a really exciting session for you. We have Mr. Guy Cormier from Desjardins Group as our keynote speaker, followed by a panel with experts from Desjardins, road safety injury prevention, and the active transportation fields. We have lunch provided if you haven't picked one up yet, and a draw for prizes, so please stick around. I would now like to introduce Guy Cormier, who is a keynote speaker from the Desjardins Group, which is the host for today's event, and thank you so much for that. Desjardins is well known in the road safety space as being a long-term partner and supporter of the work groups such as Parachute do. Mr. Cormier has been president and CEO of Desjardins Group since 2016. He has worked for the cooperative for 28 years, becoming a CAS general manager in 2002, vice president of finance in 2009, and joined Desjardins Group senior management team in 2012. Since being elected president, Mr. Cormier has worked hard to instill a strong member and client-focused culture that resonates with all our Desjardins employees and directors. On top of creating the $250 million Good Spark Fund, he has also helped the organization grow and become a household name across the country. As a champion of the cooperative model, shared prosperity, youth, and a greener, more inclusive economy, Mr. Cormier makes decisions that are based on the common good. Mr. Cormier is a graduate of HSC Montreal, where he earned both an undergraduate degree in business administration and an MBA. He also taught finance there for close to a decade. He currently sits on a number of boards and has been named a Chevalier of France's Légion d'honneur. Welcome, Mr. Cormier.
Well, well, well. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be with you today, especially because we have a great relationship with TMU since 2018. So for us, being there today is part of this partnership. And we always like, and I always like, to have an opportunity to have a discussion with students and researchers. So today it's part of that. And Desjardins has also a long history here in Ontario. We actually opened our first credit union in Ottawa in 1912. So it's been more than a century that we are banking here in Ontario. And we have always focused, and you said it before, we always focus on communities from day one here in Ontario. And our organization basically started in neighborhoods and grew from there. So we know very well neighborhoods and smaller cities. And we're really proud of the relationship that we have built over all those years with our members and clients. So when we talk to them, we understand very well now, more and more, what road safety means to them, from coast to coast to coast, as a P&C insurer in the whole country. And that's when we talk with them, it's sure that it will talk to us about road safety, but at the same time, when they talk to us about insurance, they looked at insurance as being more or only responsive when they need insurance support. And I think it's true because we want to mitigate risks. But we respond more and more to collision claims, but we're really working harder to really prevent these claims before anything happens. And that's why partnerships like what we have with Parachute is so important. It makes sense for us because we are more in a prevention mode and mindset. And we work with Parachute and partners to really prevent these kind of injuries and fatalities on the road because first, the physical costs are tragic, really tragic in the life of the people, but also the personal costs. The personal costs to the people are sometimes long-lasting for them personally and for the communities and their family. But there's also the economical cost. It's around $3.6 billion per year, $3.6 billion per year of economic cost, just because of what's happening on the road. So much of road safety comes down most of the time at the end of the day to attitudes and behaviors and how we build roads and use our infrastructures. And there's an important element of cooperation on the road, a shared responsibility, and I'm sure that we will discuss it on the panel. As individuals, cyclists, pedestrians, drivers, the relationship we have with other road users with the city and infrastructure, it depends on what we do, where we go, and how we get there. So we have here so many agencies to manage at the same time, and we can decide our own actions. But so much of what we interact with us is not up to us. Most of the time, it's relying on the people on the road with us or around us and their behaviors. And that's a big part of what we're trying to manage here. And that's a big part of what cities and the roads itself are trying to manage, if I can say. And cities are changing more and more. They're changing all the time for centuries to reflect the new trends and shift in the way we lived and how we built and where we want to live. It also impacts the city's, let's say, mindset and vitality. What we see now is quite obvious. Cities are getting denser, higher density housing, bigger share of new residential building. And I know, and you know very well, that the City of Toronto has recently amended bylaws to encourage denser building. Vancouver has done the same thing a few times ago. So downtowns grew twice as fast from 2016 to 2021 compared with the previous 5 years. So 2 times what we have seen from 2010 to 2015 when we look at 2016 to 2021. So it's not a bad thing about density. Denser cities become more walkable, become more focused on safe mobility because there's more people. But it also means at the same time more motorists, more cyclists, and more pedestrians on the road using the same streets. And some of us in the room here are all those things at the same time. And young people tick a lot of those boxes more than anyone else. Actually, we surveyed 4,000 people this year in Canada. And the young people that we spoke to, they told us from age 16 to, let's say, 24, they told us that they bike more, take transit more, and walk more than any other age group in the country. So I know that each of us we have a role, but you give a different perspective on safety on road and how to use road and how to be more responsible on it. And at the same time, and we had the discussion before, in North America, we all know that we are a car-centric culture, let's say, country or environment. And as someone who lives in Montreal, I understand very well the challenges of commuting in and out of the city. And for those who are living in cities, how commuting impacts you. And whether you're taking the GO or the TTC, walking, driving, or cycling, we need to think about all the different ways to use our roads and our infrastructure for the future. And I think that's the type of broad view we need to have you also on board when we talk about road safety. And there's right ways to increase mobility and an educational component to share use that we need to fold in. An awareness that we have that needs to happen in the next few years because of density. And we need to take road safety, I will even say more seriously. And that's why Vision Zero is such a great approach. The idea here that one injury, one fatality is one too many. And the City of Toronto is a Vision Zero city and has identified 7 priority areas where they want to make a positive impact here in Toronto. From pedestrian to aggressive driving, they're using data, focusing their efforts on locations where improvements on the road are needed the most. And I think now in 2024, we cannot only paint a bike on a busy road and call it a shared, a safe road. It's no more like that in 2024. So kudos to City of Toronto for having such an important plan and also investment in keeping people safe in this city. And as a leading insurer and the largest financial cooperative group in North America, let me tell you that Desjardins will do as much as we can to help regarding safety on the road. And we're totally committed, and we partner with key organizations like Parachute to do important education, but also awareness campaigns, programs, and research. And we also embraced data, like many other big organizations. And we were one of the first insurer in Canada to adopt telematics, an approach that improves driver awareness and incentivizes better driving behaviors and work on their habits and their attitudes. And we continue to survey thousands and thousands of our clients in Canada and members on a regular basis just to see the trends, what is important for us, for them, and what kind of perception do they have regarding driving and safety on the road, and how it changed their behaviors and their attitude. And it informed us of how much we should work with our partners or how much we should change and adapt regarding telematics. Actually, we recently won the Road Safety Achievement Award from the Ontario Ministry of Transportation this year, and we're very, very proud of that. It means that we're trying to be as proactive as we should. And in terms of investment, just to give you an example, we have put $3.2 million into road safety in the past 3 years alone. So for us, it's part of a commitment to UN and to WHO to reach the ambition of preventing at least 50% of road traffic deaths and injury by 2030. This is the way for us to be part of this journey. And the idea of one fatality or injury being too many seems, for some people, like an impossibility. But it should always be the goal in our cities. We should always strive and do everything we can to really achieve that. Because they are most of the time preventable. They are preventable. And as an employer, we also have a role to play to increase awareness among our employees. So we launched at Desjardins a commuting platform to reduce the number of vehicles heading into our offices in Mississauga and in Aurora, just as an example. And I think in Canada, we have come a long way in terms of how we think about transportation and how we should plan the use of our cities more and more. And I know that here at TMU, some of you in the room now, I had the discussion before, are learning how to get there, how to be better in the future, how plan and build our cities and our roads for the next generations. And I know that no one are using the roads more than you, the young ones. So you are the right people to help us to think, to discuss, and to have a better understanding of how we should use our roads and how should we be more responsible in building these infrastructure. So just by being here today, not there, just by being here today, I think you demonstrate how important it is for you just to have this discussion, this conversation. And as the first credit union in Canada 124 years ago, at that time, we launched Desjardins to help people to have fair access to savings and credit. So we know a bit or two regarding the power of collaboration and cooperation. That's who we are. And by being here today, I just want to remind you again that it's a strong commitment to cooperate, to collaborate, to try to find solutions to build cities that are a bit different and more safe, and you want to be part of the solution. So I congrats you to being here with us, and I hope that you will enjoy the discussion today. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you again, Monsieur Cormier and Dr. Rothman, for your lovely words. They were a great introduction to our talk today. I want to begin by welcoming everyone here who's made it out today, in particular our friends at the Ontario Good Roads Association and City of Toronto. Thank you very much. Let's give everyone, including our keynote speakers, a second round of applause. Thank you, guys. I particularly liked your discussion on how the youth use active transportation and public transportation. I'm sure that's something that a lot of us here can relate to, and judging by the cost of gas these days, certainly a welcome change. I now would like to introduce our panelists to the stage. So I will start with Ms. Pamela Fuselli, if you'd like to join us on stage here. Pamela Fuselli is the president and CEO at Parachute, Canada's national charity dedicated to injury prevention. With more than 20 years of experience in the healthcare and injury prevention sector, Pamela has written numerous national publications and is a principal or co-principal investigator and knowledge transportation expert for national and international research grants. As well, she is a speaker and a media spokesperson on a wide range of injury prevention topics and on public policy issues. Pamela received her BSc in psychology from the University of Toronto and her BHA from the Ryerson University and an MSc in creativity and change leadership.
Can you just slow down a tiny bit?
Sorry about that.
What was the last?
Her BHA from Toronto Metropolitan University and an MSc in creativity and change leadership from the State University of New York College at Buffalo. Next up, I want to welcome Ms. Valérie Lavoie. Valérie Lavoie joined Desjardins in 1994 and held a number of strategic positions before being named President and Chief Operating Officer of Desjardins General Insurance Group in 2019. She was concurrently appointed to the Desjardins Group Management Committee as Executive Vice President, Property and Casualty Insurance. Before taking on her current role, Valérie held several positions in actuarial services and distribution. She's always been skilled at rallying her teams around one common objective, doing what's best for members and clients. Last up, I want to welcome Dr. Raktim Mitra. He is a professor in the School of Urban and Regional Planning and co-director of Transform Research Laboratory here at Toronto Metropolitan University. His research focuses on the intersection between transportation planning, health, and well-being. Dr. Mitra is an internationally recognized scholar in the area of active transportation, and he has been involved in several large research projects and collaborations that explore both environmental and policy barriers to walking, cycling, and other forms of active mobility options in Canada. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time, and welcome. All right, I would like to just begin with a question for everyone here, and we will just go down the line. I want you just first to tell us the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of youth and road safety. Pamela?
Thank you, Brendan. Nice to be here with everyone. I think of innovation and creativity when I think about youth and road safety and the future. As Mr. Cormier mentioned, things are changing all the time, and I think we need to keep up to speed on that, and I think the young people in our environments have a really good handle on those changes and how it impacts their lives, but also everybody living in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Can you repeat the question? Because with the echo, I didn't hear well.
No problem. The question was...
And it's my age, maybe. I don't.
No problem. The question is, what was the first thing that comes to your mind
Okay,
when
perfect.
you think of youth and road safety?
But for me, it's like the Vision Zero program, actually. So road safety, for me, resonated with less injuries, less less fatalities actually. So it's really what resonates to me with that.
Thank you very much.
For me, I'm always surprised by how little youth voices are reflected in our policy. Youths are, in a way, captive users of public transportation. They walk most among all population groups. They bike most across all population groups. But how many times do we see that in policy making, this population group is reflected or consulted? So I think that's the first thing that I would like to change.
Thank you very much, and that gets at a lot of the points that Monsieur Cormier was making. Ms. Lavoie, I'd love to hear your input on how you think that youth can participate in the work that Desjardins does in regards to changing the standards of youth road safety.
But actually, like Mr. Cormier said and just mentioned, we know that young people are walk more, use public transit more, and as well as bike more. So I really think that, when it comes to road safety, you are actually more, I would say, young people are more mindful and even have a better awareness of from the previous generation, actually. So young people, you will definitely play an important role, an influencing role how to use and shape our cities in the future. So you are here in the room, you all understand the importance, and you experimented. You are living in Toronto, or you studying in Toronto. So I think you really know what it needs to make roads safer and cities and shape safety. Cities as you want in the future.
Thank you very much. So it sounds like Parachute is very important in facilitating that work. So I would like to ask you, Pamela, how do the input of youth in your organization impact the sort of work that you do?
Well, we need to engage with people who we are trying to impact their lives, and whether that's youth or older adults. We need to engage them because we need to understand the experiences they have. We know from the data, from the evidence in terms of what's effective, but real-world experience is an essential component to understand how do we make those changes. And as times change, and we may not be as young as we used to be, that we need to understand what youth today are experiencing. In my youth, and I think it's still the case, if you live outside of a city, a lot of our urban, smaller centers don't have the transportation infrastructure. And so the first thing I did when I turned 16 was I got my driver's license because that was the ticket to freedom. And so I think that's still very true in a lot of communities across the country. And we need to get the perspectives from youth in all areas. I mean, you think about the rural, even less populated areas, and geography makes a difference. And so we're very interested in hearing from youth with very different experiences and having them bring their perspectives, their ideas, their questions. We want to hear from them why they question why we are doing certain things. We may be able to back it up with data, but we may have not thought of that particular issue. So I think that's why it's so important to engage right from the beginning and get the involvement of youth, because ultimately we want them to be part of the solution.
Of course, those are all very important points that you brought up, and I would like to bring in Dr. Mitra into this conversation because a lot of the work that you do as a professor is gathering that data, and that ultimately forms the basis of that policy. from your work, it looks like a lot of what you do pertains to how students actually get to school. And I'm curious to hear your input both as a researcher on that topic and as a practicing professor, how you think that design intervention in cities can impact the ability of youth to access active and public transportation.
Yeah, I mean, between 2014 and 2020, we collected a lot of data about how students in university and colleges get to and from their campus and to other activities. What we often forget to recognize is that students have other things to do than coming to school. In fact, of all the trips that our students make in the GTHA, only about a third of them relate to their commute, that is coming to school or going back. The other 2/3 of the trips have nothing to do with schooling. So it's not just about coming to school, but transportation is about how you participate in your society, in your everyday lives. And living in a society like GTHA, because of high housing costs and so many other factors, we are different than many other regions in a way that the majority of our students actually live outside of the big cities. They live with their parents or they live with others, but not in the city. So that adds extra burden in terms of commuting. So our data showed that a third of all students going to a GTA area university of colleges have more than 2 hours of commute every day, a third of them. So that's a significant amount of time being taken away from their work. Then again, about 70% of our students rely on public transportation on a day-to-day basis to get to campuses. So I guess what I'm trying to get to with this is that first and foremost, we need to think about fast, reliable public transport that is actually capable to efficiently transport youth from one place to another. And to remind you, I mean, students like youth, they constitute a significant proportion of our public transportation ridership. I'm not sure if you knew this, but of all riders in GO buses, a quarter of them are students of post-secondary institutions, a quarter of all GO bus ridership. But unfortunately, the scheduling and other planning of these services are still centered around people working 9-to-5 jobs. Students don't. Our students don't come to campuses at 9 and go back at 5. Our data again shows that the majority of our students come to campus fewer days of a week. 3 days is the typical, but when they come, they stay longer periods of time. They stay from 8 until 8 at night or 9 at night. So, I mean, we were talking about changes in trends and patterns. So we do see a change, particularly in the post-COVID times, in the way our youth use our transportation services. And I fear that we may not have given enough thoughts into incorporating these in how we plan our services. So that, of course, needs to change. I'm giving a very long answer. But then again, for your everyday lives, streets needs to be safer for all road users. And most of our young citizens, they are relying on public transportation, walking, biking for their everyday trips. And for them to make roads safer, these choices should be made available to them so that they can go to the places where they want to go safely and efficiently.
Thank you very much.
May I add something to that?
Please, go ahead.
Because actually it's very interesting because we have data also in insurance company, as you can imagine. And with our telematic solutions, what we see, it's really a change in behavior following the pandemic. So we know that people, not just the young people, we have a data for young people, they are buying less car than the previous generation. Okay, so it's a fact. The other things is following the pandemic, we saw really a change in when people are using their cars. First, because of telework and all of those things. So there's really a shift. So to your point, that's true that we need to adapt to this new world for sure in urban planning.
Of course, very prescient words from both of you. I see a lot of nodding heads around here, and I think that a lot of people in this room can relate to the issues you bring up about students who live outside the city. Speaking personally, to get here today, I commuted from Caledon. I budgeted about 2 hours for myself, and it took about 2 hours, and I used, I think, 3 or 4 different modes of transportation. And so I'm curious, Pamela, if you could speak to some of the dangers and some of the issues that sort of arise when students find themselves in those situations.
I think the environment that we live in really impacts the safety of ourselves and our families. We talk about road users in distinct groups. So we've been talking about pedestrians and cyclists and drivers, but oftentimes, as you just alluded to, you use multiple modes of transportation to get just from home to the campus. So, and all of us, even if we're a driver, at some point we park the car and we're a pedestrian, and we want to be as safe as the pedestrian as we are as the driver of the car. So when you think about the neighborhoods and the street structure, you think about lighting, are there enough traffic lights, crosswalks, sidewalks even. When you get outside of the main metropolitan cities, you've got lack of sidewalks that we hear about. So all of those things contribute to the safety of anyone using our streets, but in particular when we have youth out at various times and making their way from point A to point B, whether that's to school or to a job or to their friend's house or to a concert or something. Those are things that you may not think about, but the next time you're walking down the street, take notice of whether there are sidewalks, whether there's lights, where you cross. Is there a crosswalk there or a light, or is that just where everybody crosses because it's the most convenient? That's one of the things that we need to take into account when we're urban planning is where people are going to take the most direct route possible. And so, you see people cutting across the street because that is where most people want to go, and there's no thought that has been given to how in reality people are using the streets. And unfortunately, we see in some neighborhoods that may be lower income, not as many amenities or services. We often, unfortunately, see people living in areas where there are higher speeds, less enforcement of traffic speeds or bylaws or things like that, and less, I'll call them amenities, but things that are essential for safe transportation like sidewalks. So all of those things really have an impact, and they cross sectors, which is something that we've been doing at Parachute, is looking at working with active and healthy living, working with physical and mental health groups, working with environmental issues, and our road safety partners, because all of us in some way, shape, or form are calling for very similar changes. I won't bring up bike lanes in Toronto right now, given the recent announcement, but that's an example of something that all of us can agree on are needed. We're actually coming from it from a different perspective, but thinking about how that impacts individuals' lives. And I think that's the conversations with youth that we're having and with road users in general is how are you experiencing your environment on a day-to-day basis?
Exactly. That is one of the most fascinating aspects of urban planning to me, is how these relatively innocuous aspects of how our streets are designed can just have a huge impact on how they actually get used and how they're incorporated into the city. I'd love if Dr. Mitra could speak more to where your research has taken you in regards to how these relatively small aspects of street design sort of play differently when you're talking about youth road safety versus, for example, older demographics who are more likely to drive?
Well, of course, I mean, design has a very important role to play. I mean, there are theories around it that say, well, why do we walk? Because when we want to walk in an environment where we feel comfortable, where we feel that walking is perhaps the most convenient way for me to go from one place to another. I mean, yes, of course. I mean, there are some people who walk or bike because they have like higher environmental calling. They want to save environment, so on and so forth. But most people walk or bike because it's just the most practical way to do it for them. And that's where design plays a big role, right? So when we design these streets that make these environments safer for these vulnerable road users, that separate high-speed traffic from low-speed traffic, for example. For pedestrians who are crossing the streets, it gives them some space to rest in between, crossing a big street. Good signage that tells people where to go and how to get there. These are the small things, planters, sittings, that make that improves the street aesthetics, making this space more comfortable for people who are using this. All these things do matter in a sense that they encourage us to consider this as an option. I mean, yes, there are bigger environmental benefits to it, but as an individual, most of the people, when they're walking and biking, we're not thinking about the bigger picture. We're thinking about what's most beneficial and what's most convenient to me. And that's where I think design plays a role. It can make streets safer, make streets more beautiful, more attractive for pedestrians and cyclists to use them.
Thank you very much. We only have a few minutes left, but I would like to ask Ms. Lavoie, we heard a lot about how sort of youth interact with our cities, but as part of Desjardins, I'm curious how you see youth as sort of being empowered within your organization and how the potential that you see for the youth demographic for actually influencing our road safety.
Yes, thank you. But actually, we work very hard at Desjardins to amplify the voice of young Canadians. Just a couple of examples here. So we have what we call a youth board advisory committee in Desjardins, which are a number of young people aged between 18 and 30. So they can influence, because all our sectors are going there to ask them about their perspective on different topics. It can be financial behaviors, can be on environmental aspects, can maybe also on IT solutions. And just give you an example, when we decided at one point, a couple of years ago, to revamp our telematics solution called Adjusto, which is a very good preventive way to develop good driving habits. And we went there. We asked them, what do you think about these solutions? Because we know that young people are really attracted by this kind of applications. We had a survey regarding that, and we know that they want to be engaged. It's influence, yes, their insurance premium, but as well, it can bring a lot of good, behavior on the road. So it's one part. Also, by hiring young people as well. So we are hiring a lot of new people every year in Desjardins, and it's very important for us. It's so important that we're following numbers. We have targets to hire young people to make sure that they are part of the organization, so we stay connected to them, and that they can bring also their perspective to all the solutions, because they are working on some important files. Also, another example, and Mr. Guy, my boss, is talking about it a little bit earlier, but actually we put 50 million a year towards youth initiatives through a program called Together for Our Youth. And part of this program, it's about education, employment, entrepreneurships, health, healthy lifestyles, and community involvement. So we have supported up to now 3,000 initiatives across all Canada for 1 million young Canadians. And in that, we include also scholarships and coaching, financial assistance for entrepreneurs. Guy talked also a little bit about our credit union branches. Actually, part of the credit union branches, every of them have also a board, and we have a program, a young intern director program, where we ask members from 18 to 30 to join, to have a chance to join this board, so to influence the decision in their own community, so locally. So it's really important, and kind of things that they may influence. It's about road safety. So, and finally, by contributing with organization, so we have partners like Parachute for sure, and just the event today, just think about it, the event today, also the Canadian Youth Road Safety Week. It's really about young people and to improve our road safety in the road. Parachute, I don't want to talk on behalf of you, Pam, sorry about that, but I think what you're putting in place also with the Youth Council, Brendan, you're part of it. So I think it's the place where we heard the voice of youth into road safety. So we invest also a lot of money into this kind of organization. We have also a partnership with the Traffic Injury Research Foundation, TURF, that provides a lot of data. Also, they are into data a lot, and also they are providing insight and influence governments, business into this aspect also of road safety. We have Arrive Alive, Drive Sober. We also invest into, and finally, Operation Red Nose, that we also invest into it. So I really hope that we showed you how important the young are, and you have a voice. So please just dare to say and dare to act. Go to join a community so your voice will be heard, and it's so important. You cannot imagine how your voice is important. Not just in Desjardins, I mean everywhere. It's everywhere. You need you. You are the future, and just go and say what you have to say about road safety. It will be just amazing, I'm sure.
Thank you very much for that answer. And on behalf of the Youth Road Safety Council, certainly we cannot overstate the importance of those projects. We only have a bit of time left, and I know there's probably a lot of questions here in the audience, so I think we will open it up to the audience. Where is my friend Asma? She will be delivering the microphone. So anyone who has questions, please raise your hand. And anyone want to get started? Gentleman over here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Joshua Little, and I think one of the biggest things I face as a youth is, my team and I, we're working on something we called Full Ride, which is that we're trying to reduce the amount of cars on the road, because most of those cars only have one person, which is the driver, driving them. And one of the biggest takeaways we've found is the reason so many people are driving is the convenience, obviously. But how can we match that if we're not giving convenience, but let's say if you're walking, how can we give a trade-off that is as appealing as to drive when walking? It won't be convenience, but what can we give you? Is it a beautiful path to walk? Is it more electric bikes for people who can't go certain distances? So that is something that we've been looking into as well. So.
I'll start, and I think you probably have something to add, but you're right. I think the more convenient that we can make it, the more access points. So when you look at communities that have a lot of multimodal use, so cars, bikes, walking, e-mobility options, it's because you can get from point A to point B or point A to point double F or whatever. Like there's options like that. And I think the convenience piece, we need to make more of those choices more convenient, because you see people opting for those options when it is a lovely place to walk, or you know that you can take a 20-minute cycle and you can still get your errands done or get wherever you want to go, and it's safe as well. So I think there is something that we need to put that convenience, and that's where that real world experience comes from. So if you say, I want to get from Caledon to downtown Toronto and I have 2 options, how do we make them more options and more convenient?
I think we have to recognize that good urban design and beautiful sidewalks can go only so far. We have to recognize that cars are not only the most convenient mode of transportation, they are, all things considered, they are the cheapest option to travel. Public transit costs more than cars. Most of the other things are less practical if you live far from where you work or go to school, right? So how do we solve this? I think if I were an economist, I'd say, well, the easiest way to solve this is to make driving more expensive. How do we do it? Most of the city still has free parking, which I'm outrageous every time I see this. I don't drive in my everyday life, but when I'm with my family, I'm always driving. Why? Because it's just cheaper. Even if I pay $12 parking, it's still cheaper than 4 people taking transit.
I mean, but you're not paying yourself for the chauffeur, right? Because if you consider that as well, that's
No, I'm
starting to rack up the cost.
No, I'm not. What I'm trying to get to is that, look, we are living in a culture that is centered around the idea of automobility. And anything that comes in the way of that idea is hard fought politically, and particularly politically. And all these, announcements and policy that are in the news today about the bike lanes, that all connects back to that. It comes back to the idea of what is the purpose of a street. And for some reason, which is rooted in this idea of the prominence of automobiles, is that people who are driving should be able to travel from point A to point B as fast as possible. That needs to change, right? If we switch our focus from this desire for speed to other things like safety, everything changes.
Or even as I said earlier, if somehow we were able to make the walk-in more leisurable, like we rush to get there in 15 minutes only to wait around for another 45 or where we are. Like, how can we just do an hour commute that's enjoyable, something like that?
May I add? I'm
Yes,
not
please,
an
go ahead.
expert at all, okay, in that. But for consumer, let's say, for me, it's yes, the speed and also the simplicity. And think about all people in the community, because a young woman with a children, someone with a disability, so we need to think also about them, because sometimes it's much more complicated to take the public transit than to take a car.
Thank you very much. I do want to hear from one more student. Let's hear from you in the back, please.
Thank you so much. I am the fast track program student for the program of public health and occupational safety, and I am really amazed that Desjardins is investing in prevention as well, along with the claims and insurance. My question is regarding the personal safety. You have mentioned that youth is more into using the bikes and cycling, but by law till 18 they are compelled to use the helmet. But is there anything that we can use, the awareness sessions or the things that the youth is more focused on the personal safety as well when they are cycling on the roads?
So So your question is about, what are some of the other things that youth can do from a personal perspective?
Yes, and like how we can motivate them to use the safety measures as well when we are promoting the active transportation and the other.
Right. The first thing I'll say is human behavior is the hardest to change. So we have a bit of an uphill battle. But I think if habits are formed early, and you spoke about the law of helmet wearing. There's no physical reason why somebody that's 25 doesn't need to wear a helmet and somebody under 18 does. And unfortunately, often we see kids riding their bikes with helmets and their parents not. So there's a culture change that needs to take place, that these are good measures for everyone. One of the things that we focus on at Parachute is, and it's in our missions, is living a long life to the fullest. And by taking some of those precautions, like wearing a bike helmet or having safe places to bike and ride and drive, obviously on our roads, the car is not going away, it's going to evolve, and there's still going to be use of that. So how do we make it more equitable and safer? So I think your comment about when we prioritize something, when we put resources towards it, and when we make someone accountable for it, that's when we see quickest change and more sustainable change. So I think that's one of the solutions, is to decide what our major focus is, and decisions kind of fall out from that.
Thank you very much. With all due respect, I know we have a schedule to follow, so I would just like to finish with one more question very quickly for each of our panelists down here. You all come from very different angles in the issues that we've talked about. I would just like to hear very quickly one thing that you would like all the youth in this room to take home, and one piece of advice you'd give them for someone trying to influence these issues within your own respective fields. Pamela?
I'm going to say collaboration and cooperation. So as you've heard, we have a great relationship with Desjardins. We have wonderful relationships with other organizations, other companies like Honda, like Amazon, like government agencies. This is all about collaboration amongst different sectors. No one of us is going to solve this issue alone. And so I would say to the youth, no matter where you're coming from in your studies or your passion, take a look at where that can be focused. If it is something like road safety, it can take the form of many different careers, whether that's in public health, in occupational health, in insurance, in car industry, in biking industry, in municipal politics. There's a role for you to play in all of these different areas, and your contribution can't be undervalued or valued enough, because it's very important. And the approach that Parachute takes to all of our work is building relationships, building collaboration with people who have shared visions and shared values, and that's how we have had success in moving our agenda forward.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lavoie?
Yes, and I will continue on this the same. So the generation, the Z generation, has to actually be the more vocal when it comes time to relationship with business that line up to their values, actually. So you can advocate first as a consumer, and you have something potential employers has and wants. So just remember that first, and I would say be vocal again, engage. You cannot influence if you don't know what's going on. So be engaged in the company, in the community. Find an organization you believe in. It may be road safety, impaired driving, or I don't know, bike infrastructure, or kind of things. If you can't. So my advice is just be engaged.
Thank you very much.
Look, change takes time. But at the same time, when we are talking about urban planning, broadly speaking, it's very value-driven. There's no science that says that if we design streets for car, that's better or worse than if we design streets for pedestrians and cyclists. It's all driven by values. So I hope that as today's youth, as we begin to put more values on accessibility, as we begin to put more values on the importance of human life and safety over anything else, those values should and would be reflected in your practice when you enter the profession. So that's my hope, and I urge everyone to bring these values to your practice. And I feel like only then we can make significant changes to how we think about road safety, how we design our streets and our neighborhoods.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful end to our discussion. Thank you, Dr. Mitra, Pamela, Ms. Lavoie. I think we all owe them a big round of applause. All right, I will welcome back Dr. Linda Rothman to help me do the raffle here. Thank you, guys.
Okay. So you can pick one. Okay. So announce what it's for. Okay. We do have a raffle, and just to thank everybody for coming. Desjardins very generously provided these Presto cards. So the first person is 309155.
We do have a few extra raffle tickets over there, so we may have to pull a few numbers just in case.
Nobody there? Okay. 309153. Mom, public transit. Nope.
Perhaps.
309131. Yay, we got one. I have them all. 309099. Oh, there we go. Three zero nine two four eight. Oh, there we go. Okay, and the next one. Okay, these are Amazon gift cards. These are actually from a great scholarship I got. It was called the Early Researcher Award from the Ontario Ministry of Colleges and Universities when I first started at TMU. And they provide some funding for youth engagement activities and related to my research program, which is related on road safety injury prevention. So this is funded by that scholarship. 309154. F.
I will deliver to you.
What? No, to keep it. Three 309160. Up there. Oh, you got one?
Where was it?
There. 309096. Oh, there we go. Three 309244. Oh, there we go. 309165. This is the last one. 309198.
Say again.
309198. Yeah. Oh, that was a very lucky little corner there. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here.